Now, here's the good news. The Republican leadership in the Senate has an opportunity to put this political locomotive back on the constitutional tracks. But for that to happen, it's going to take a conservative engineer who's got the spine to stand up to Schumer and company and stand up for the president and stand up in defense of the United States Constitution. Question is, can Mitch McConnell be that constitutional engineer, or will we get the same old mediocre Mitch? Joining me now from our bureau in Washington, D.C., political commentator and president of Americans for Limited Government, Richard Manning. Richard, I would say if I was Mitch McConnell, fine to Chuck Schumer. You're right, Chuck. We need witnesses. We need witnesses of the constitutional variety. You want witnesses? Then we will use the same procedure that you folks, the Democrats, used in the House of Representatives, right? Those rules that they passed in 2019 to impeach the 45th president of the United States. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And so if you want witnesses, Chuck, we'll give you witnesses. And if one of them happens to be the guy who helped lead this impeachment, Adam Schiff, and we ask, for example, for documents, as well as the subpoena for possibly him to be a witness, but we subpoena documents. If Schiff doesn't comply, then sorry, we're not going to allow your witnesses. This is what they did to the Republicans in the House of Representatives. Why can't Mitch McConnell just reverse the bet? Richard, on the golf course, we say, you know, a good bet is reversible. Reverse the bet. Do it now.
Well, I think that's exactly one of the things he should do. First and foremost, Graham, I want to make it clear, Chuck Schumer is not the majority leader of the Senate. Chuck Schumer is not the person who's driving this train. He's making a lot of noise, but I'm really offended by the fact that he thinks he can dictate to the Senate who's going to come as witnesses and who's not.
Right.
What's more, I'm really offended by the fact that this guy who never said a word when Donald Trump was not allowed to provide a defense in the House, and House impeached with the witnesses they have. So there's no need for the House to have any additional witnesses. They impeached based on the evidence that was presented to the House. They chose not to follow any legal recourse to get other witnesses there. And they said, we're impeaching, we're ready. So the Senate should take the House at their word. They say they've got an impeachment-ready case. They need to present that case. And Donald Trump needs to be allowed to present the witnesses that he needs to present to show clearly to the nation that this was a total put-up job. He did nothing wrong. And in fact, he was following the laws of the United States when he was dealing with the Ukrainians and talking about corruption, because the truth of the matter is the law requires on that particular transaction, it requires that the president affirm that there's no corruption in the Ukraine before those missile transfers occur. So that's what the president was doing. He's doing exactly the right thing. I'm tired of Chuck Schumer trying to change this story.
Right, and this is why it bothers me that, of course, Chuck Schumer technically is the minority leader, but he's acting like the majority leader. And this is why it's very important for Mitch McConnell to rise to the occasion here and understand that the rules are anything Mitch McConnell wants, effectively. He is the leader, and so he can take a similar stance as they took in the House of Representatives. For example, Richard, in 1999, in the impeachment rules of Bill Clinton, they had no live witnesses. Okay, they didn't have any then, but Mitch McConnell can have live witnesses now. They limited the evidence to public record. Well, Mitch could say, you know what, we're going to bring in new evidence. The point is, when the mainstream media is out there saying that they're at an impasse, the Republicans and the Democrats are at an impasse on Capitol Hill, that Nancy Pelosi is on one end and Mitch McConnell's on the other, this is the tactical mistake that the Republicans are making right now. Tactical not only to try and defend the 45th president of the United States, but tactical in defense of the United States Constitution. It's very important for Mitch McConnell to understand that they are playing by one set of rules. And if you play by another set of rules, they're going to beat you down in the gutter.
Oh, that's absolutely right. In fact, I know for a fact that people are planning for any kind of impeachment trial to be surrounded with even a bigger circus than the Kavanaugh hearings were surrounded by, and they're making security arrangements based on that. So what we have is the Democrats are attempting to turn this into a complete circus because their objective is twofold. They want to slow the Senate down so the Senate doesn't have as many working days in 2020 between then and Election Day. Secondly, they want to impugn this president and have people who are undecided say, you know, I like what the president's doing, but there's always a fight around him, and can't we all just get along? So they want to make it as messy as possible because they believe that's good for them politically. Yep. The truth of the matter is these Democrats are hurting our country. They're hurting our standing around the world. They're stopping us from doing trade deals because people don't think they have to trade with us. They're hurting us in North Korea. They're hurting us everywhere around the world by doing this. And they should be ashamed of themselves for continuing with it.
And they're harming the psyche of the United States and the republic in which we live. And clearly they're doing, I hope it's not permanent damage, but certainly they're doing damage to our founding document, the United States Constitution. One other thing concerns me right now, and this pertains to witnesses too, Richard. I get an undertone, just a feeling, that even Republicans, especially long-term Republicans like Mitch McConnell in the United States Senate, are almost protecting Joe Biden, being a former member of that club, the United States Senate. And it concerns me very, very deeply that we don't have senators out there saying back to Joe Biden, who's literally telling the United States Senate and the Congress that he may thumb his nose at a subpoena to impeach. Why are we not hearing from Republican members of the United States Senate saying, you know what, Joe, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You served in the Senate for 3 decades, more than 3 decades. To say that you're going to thumb your nose at a congressional subpoena is outrageous. And I'll tell you one more thing, Richard. There is a sergeant of arms in the United States Senate. It's one of the most highest-ranking law enforcement officials in our republic on the federal level. There's a sergeant at arms in the Senate for a reason, and we ought to think about using it in this case.
Well, I agree with you. There's no excuse for Joe Biden and Hunter Biden saying, no, we're not going to honor a Senate subpoena. Remember, the House case is, in terms of obstructing Congress, is based on the argument that the president didn't allow people from his administration to testify in front of the House. So they created a charge called obstructing Congress, and yet one of the witnesses, 2 of the witnesses that the president wants to call and legitimately should be able to call are actually saying, no, we're going to ignore a subpoena issued by the Senate. And one of those witnesses was the vice president who actually served as the head of the Senate for 8 years. It is despicable, it's unacceptable, and the fact is, if the president isn't able to make his case, and that, which is the first and foremost responsibility of the House or the Senate, is to allow him to make his case, his defense case. Right. If he's not allowed to do that fully and completely, they have not done their job constitutionally.
That is the litmus test, bottom line litmus test, Richard. What is fair? It should be what is fair to this president who has been railroaded in the lower chamber. Now Mitch McConnell has a chance to fix the deal and put the train back on the constitutional tracks in the upper chamber, because the president is right. The Democrats have cheapened impeachment, and Mitch McConnell has a shot here to uncheapen it, but he's got to rise to the occasion. Richard, thank you. Coming up next, how impeachment is playing among voters in the key swing state of Arizona.